Make sure that's working. Make sure that's working. All right, we're good.
Didn't we have a loop once because we were trying to like watch the Facebook stream and then
feedback and
yeah, I kept hearing an echo or loop.
Yeah, it's a little bit delayed. Yeah, Chase, I mean, I can share whenever and do the market report.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead, I think we can just go ahead and kind of get started. It's gonna be really laid back and
yeah.
So let's go ahead and get the market report rolling.
Let's see. Are you seeing the market report?
It's taking about half the page.
All right, yeah. I'll scroll down here. So median sales price is now in Harrisonburg and Rockingham County. It's now $286,500. That is 18.9% over last year. That's pretty common, or it's not like a huge jump. It's been increasing this whole year. The inventory shortage and the interest rates being low have really increased demand and caused prices to go up. This has also caused rent rates to go up. It's an interesting kind of thing that there are some people that are priced out of the market and they are paying more for rent instead of buying. So all that stuff is going up. Inventory levels are still extremely low. Median days on the market has gone up a little since the past months, but it's still only 5 days. And it's down 44% since August compared to August of last year. Number of house sales is up. So one interesting thing about this market is that people believe that there's nothing to buy. When in fact, there's probably more houses circulating through, and it's simply that they don't stay on the market very long. So at any given time, you don't have very many options to buy from. But if you're looking over a couple month period, there's probably going to be even more options that circle through than years like last year, for example. But I mean, that's the gist of it. Overall, we've had 18% more sales year to date. The median sales price has gone up 12%, and the median days on the market is up or is faster by 55%.
Do you remember what the median home sale price was just like 2 years ago for Harrisonburg? Was it like 212 or something?
That could be close. Yeah. I mean, we could go back here.
Isn't it crazy that you could just bought a house, held it for 2 years?
Yeah.
This will be interesting to see.
Let's see here, November 2020, median sales price, 257 year to date, would have been 222 in 2019. Yeah.
Almost 60 grand just by buying a house.
Yeah. That's the market.
Yeah, that's the market. But I mean, just long term, it's gonna, stuff's gonna continue to go up.
Right. And what I tell all my buyers is like right now may not be the best time to buy, but it just depends on how long you're planning to hold. If you plan to hold for 30 years, it doesn't matter at all, really. Like, get in now, and the interest rates are what's really going to matter over the long term, because will we have sub 3% interest rates for 30 years? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it just depends on your life. And if you're wanting to sell in 3 years, probably don't buy right now.
Yeah, definitely. And if you guys have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Oh, can you enable that real quick for me, Matthias?
Oh, yeah.
But if you guys have any questions at any point, it's going to be pretty laid back.
Does that work?
I think we're good. Okay. All right.
There we go.
So we're kind of just going to hop right into it. For those that are watching the video later, we have had some technical issues, so we don't have much of a turnout tonight, so we might not have a lot of questions, and we're just going to kind of go through everything and answer any questions as they come up from the people that are here. But the topic's going to be how to estimate rehab costs for your next renovation. And the general idea behind this isn't to give you an actual, like, here's what it costs per square foot. It's to give you a way to, just a blueprint of how to get your own numbers together. So that way you can make your own basically spreadsheets or however you're going to go about doing it to analyze deals and rehabs in the future. So we'll get going here. So the general overview is, in order to understand how to estimate rehab costs, you first need to understand what's in need of repair. So a lot of this today is going to be going over like things that are going to stick out at you that you need to know. If it's more than likely to need to be repaired or replaced. If you don't have any construction experience, then generally it's advisable to walk the property with a licensed general contractor or a contractor that you trust. Even with a licensed GC, you should still have some understanding what you're looking for to point out specific structures to get their opinion on, because even if you have a scope of work together, even if you have exactly what your game plan is, unless you point all these things out to your contractor, there, depending on what type of contractors, they might just think you want the bare bones, or basically everything that's, unnecessary, like ground molding, that sort of thing, which could really kill your rehab budget. So we're going to break it down into the exterior, interior, and then general for the rehabs. So for the exterior, a lot of this stuff is going to seem really common sense, but we're going to have some pictures and stuff too. And, if you guys have any questions, then feel free to stop me at any point. But for the
I was just going to say this serves as a really good checklist. I mean, you can kind of do these things need work? And yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things too, kind of segueing off of that, is what I would advise doing. What we actually do with our company is we have just a sheet of paper that has all these, like Matthias is saying, that's exterior, interior, and then general things that you need to just, while you're there walking through, even if you've looked through a lot of properties, it's so easy to miss some things. So if you see all these sections, you have to check off as you're going through if it needs it or not, or how much work it needs. And that'll really help. That'll help you from missing any items that need to be repaired. So for the exterior, we've got roof, and then we've got the gutter, soffit, and fascia. We've got siding, windows, decks, exterior painting, garage, landscaping, septic and well for some of those rural properties, and your foundation. And this isn't an all-inclusive list, but this is just kind of the higher level stuff that we're going to talk about today. And then the interior, we actually put demo as a line item because you need to know how much you're going to be spending tearing things out, and then landfill fees, plumbing, electrical, HVAC. We've got framing, carpentry, trim work, insulation, sheetrock, cabin sheet and countertops, interior painting, floor, and then structural / miscellaneous. This is for things like if you're opening up walls, moving walls, if you need, new doors inside, or, hardware. A lot of that. So like, for example, a lot of little things that we just add up is about $1,500 to $2,000 just for things like new door hinges, even if you're keeping the slabs, doorknobs, stoppers, just a bunch of little things like that, smoke detectors. So that would fall into that category. And then under general, we've got permits, mold, like mold remediation, termite, that's for treatment, inspections, which are usually free if you own the home, but termite inspection, treatment, and repair. Then radon, if that needs testing and remediation, those are two different costs, and anything else that's along those lines that hasn't fit into the other two. Interior, exterior lists. So the major renovation items that you definitely want to be checking out, and we'll have some photo examples of this too, but is your roof, your foundation, looking for any structural issues. So that's a little bit different than the foundation, that we'll have some pictures inside, which you can kind of see signs of what something might be. Everything might feel fine as you're walking through, but there might be some signs of structural issues. Your well and septic, your mold, and termites. Something we don't go into too much depth, but we can if you guys are interested, is kind of ways to mitigate risk on wells and septics, since a lot of properties around here do have them. So before we move on, any questions or anything? Because we're flying through this.
I got a question, Chase.
Yeah.
Are those items in your list rather like major items? Those because they're the most expensive items to take care of, or?
Yeah. So the major renovation items are just the ones that can quickly sink your budget. So the only thing that's not in here, for example, is like if for some reason you need to replumb or rewire a house. So if you had like Quest plumbing, for example, and you like a lot of the house had Quest, and you need to replumb it because that's an issue for inspections. But these are the ones that are very common and very often. You probably see them a lot. And if you miss them, you know, a roof can at least be $6,500 if it's just even a small roof.
Yeah.
So and structural issues can be tens to twenties of thousands of dollars, depending on how bad they are.
That's the big foundation structural issues is huge.
Yeah.
And it's often like something that you may not fully understand going into it potentially. I mean, there's some things that are like very obvious, but the only thing I would also add to that is maybe HVAC. Like, I mean, that's a little bit more obvious. Like the system might be really old, or there might not be any kind of HVAC system in it, and you know you're going to need to add a system into to be able to sell it or whatever you want to do. So that can easily be, you know, 10 plus grand if you have to do duct work and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of the thing too, is like for example, mold, we're talking about here, this would be like remediation, but if you have a really bad mold issue, that can be tens of twenties of thousands of dollars too, because you might have to essentially tear everything out and then put, you know, new drywall, insulation, everything back, depending on how much square footage it is. I've just seen some older houses where the whole finished basement had to be done, and then that's a lot more than 20 grand. So, but HVAC is a good point too. We've got that. We do that under the interior, but it's one thing when you're walking through. We can like talk, if you guys want, kind of more in depth about certain things to look out for these, because we don't really get into it through the slideshow. But yeah, definitely, because HVAC could be, you know, 4,500, $5 grand for a change out, or it could be over 10 to 12, like Matthias is saying, if you have to put ductwork in for just a simple house.
Yep.
So for the roof, we want to give a few pictures, just because some people don't know if the roof is kind of at the end of its expected life period or not. And just as a disclosure, I mean, I'm not a licensed contractor. This is just based on personal opinion and experience. So take that for what you will, but I'm not a contractor. So the best thing that I would advise, if there's any questions about anything, if you're looking at a project, then get someone who is a licensed contractor, come out and check it out. So that way they can get you an opinion on the price and if it needs to be done or not. Someone you can really trust and does good work. So obviously if you start seeing mold on the roof, you know it's pretty old. Doesn't necessarily mean the roof is bad, but when you see the shingles starting to peel up and everything, you know it's getting very close. And if you aren't going to have to replace it, then the next owner is. So it's generally better to go ahead and budget in replacing the roof, because you might have to do that. Once the granules start to come off of the tabs, and then obviously if you have damaged or missing shingles, that's going to be the most obvious. When you see all those black spots where shingles have been ripped off, then you know that the roof is going to need to be replaced. Just some shady areas too, just not to make things confusing, but if you have a lot of mildew and it kind of looks, you know, not this bad, but it's just darker, then sometimes roofs can be cleaned off too. If it's got a lot of shade or a lot of trees around it, the roof might be all right. But generally it's best just to check with a contractor. And if anything is in between these kind of pictures, otherwise just budget having to have it done is the safer thing to do.
One thing I like to do too is look at the age of the house. So if you're looking at a house that's coming up on a 25-year mark, for example, that could be a time where that's going to have to be replaced. So if you look at the granular loss, that picture, it looks like a very, very flat kind of roof. That's probably going to be a 25-year shingle. If you look at one that has more dimensions, it looks like a little thicker. That's probably going to be like a 30-year, potentially. Again, not a roofer, but that's another way you can kind of start guesstimating. So if you have an older property, you might think, okay, they might have got it replaced 25 years in, and now how many years is it into the next life? So that's another way to kind of guesstimate as to how old. Now there are some, I hear there's even 10-year shingles that are put on some places. So it's not a rule of thumb, but 25 is a very common, and 30 is a very common age for shingles. And sometimes they even get like 50-year shingles, which I don't know if I really trust a roof to last for 50 years, but
yeah. Well, like you're saying, a lot of those, like the 50-year shingles might only last like 35 or 40 years really.
Yeah.
But the only, also just going off that too, the only two things that are not on here that are very important and can really mess up your budget are, when you are looking at the roof, pay close attention to like down here on the side by the gutters, because you want to make sure that there aren't two layers of shingles. Sometimes people will just put a roof over another roof, and you can maybe get by with that once, but you're going to have twice the tear off and landfill fees when you have to replace the roof, because you can't put a third one on there. And we never do a second roof. It's always tear off what's there and put a new one back.
I had a place that was shingles and then metal on top of the shingles, and the metal wasn't done correctly. So I had a roofer be like, well, we're going to have to tear off like the metal and the shingles and then put on something right. So yeah, it's a good point.
Well, and then before you made, I mean, I've seen, like, driving down the road, I've seen some houses being, like remodeled, whatever. And then you have your roof, and then you have like a metal roof on top, putting a metal roof on top of it, which one is more convenient or more, I would say, to the pocket, like replacing the whole thing and doing shingle, or probably going ahead and do metal, in your opinion?
So are you saying metal over shingle or tearing off?
Metal over shingle, which one will be more convenient, to tear it all apart and put metal, or just do the metal over shingle?
I mean, I would check with the roofer, but I mean, in my opinion, I wouldn't. I know some people do put metal over the shingles, but I would tear off the shingles first, because you've got to put a proper underlayment underneath the metal, from what I understand too. I've not done a lot of metal roofs. I've done quite a bit of shingle roofs, but you don't want to have it over top of anything. It's just not as good of a base, The big thing too, and this is a much rarer circumstance, but I've seen it around here not quite a few times, but at least a few times, is if you do have an older house like Matias is talking about, and the best thing you can kind of do is spend some time looking at roofs. Like when you're looking at your first property, or if you're doing your next one, you'll start to see what a normal shingle roof looks like. But if you see ones that kind of look like slate/shingle, like they look like an in-between of like a slate slab and a shingle, then it could be asbestos shingles.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that is really expensive, because you have to remediate them first. And then I've even seen one recently where they had a asphalt shingle over top of asbestos shingles.
Oh Lord. So
you would have had to tear it off and then do the asbestos layer underneath. So that would really mess up your budget. So
I have heard of a contractor sealing an asbestos roof and putting a new layer on top, like even putting, I think maybe even like a layer of plywood on top, the ceiling, and then doing shingle. But I don't know if that'd
probably be the cheapest way, because if you had to tear it off, it would be.
It's legal to seal asbestos. You don't have to dispose of it. If you can cover, like there's siding that's asbestos, you can wrap it and put a vinyl layer over top. So that's another option there. So
the asbestos, I mean, I'm sure you guys have, if you live around here, you've seen asbestos siding. As long as it's in good shape, it's really not that bad. It's really durable, but you just need to know what you're kind of getting into there. But that's kind of a different spot. But the roof, if you just see a roof where you're like, oh, that's kind of an odd roof, wonder what's going on with that, then definitely don't write it off, because it could be an asbestos roof. So
It's a good
something you have
point.
to deal with. So we're going to go on to the foundation. So here's an example of a foundation issue. It's one that's really obvious. And kind of the issue with these is not just the price, but whenever we've looked at a project and had a contractor give us an estimate on repairing it, at least in the past, what they've been talking about doing is having to dig out around the house and then jack up the house for that side, basically build either a new wall or brace it or put it back or whatever they're going to do, and then fill it back in. And your issue there is they're like, well, worst case scenario, you could collapse the house. So
That's not good.
Yeah. I mean, have you had to deal with any of these, Matthias, or no?
Yeah. Probably not any of this bad, but I think a lot of people will also brace these with steel beams, or there's actually Kevlar that you can use now that will be like kind of more straps that you could actually put a wall over top of a little more easily. So this one's really bad. And I think the key thing here is you're looking at a horizontal crack. So if you imagine the wall is being pushed like that by pressure from the outside. So it could be like water pressure, whatever. They didn't lay the brick right or the block right. And so it's being pushed in. A lot of people will freak out if there's like stair stepping cracks, but that's usually not an issue. Again, not a structural person. You should
check with a structural engineer.
Yeah, check with them or whatever. But typically the horizontal cracks like this are the big things. And so if it's not this bad, then you might be able to just brace it with some sort of system going from the ground to the floor joists. One of the drawbacks of doing that is if a buyer will see that, they might get a little bit freaked out by it. But if you have a structural engineer report saying that it's good, then you at least have that kind of report saying, hey, this has been looked at by an expert and they say it's sturdy. It should be good for ever.
Yeah. That'd really help with that too. So here's kind of like another image of one. It's the exact same setup, so it's really obvious with the way it's bowing. But let's see. The next one is going to be kind of structural issues here, so you can kind of see this is kind of the stair stepping that Matthias is talking about, but it's clearly a lot worse than just a little crack, So this is one where it's separating. That's actually an issue there.
I should say that the stair stepping in the concrete block foundation is like just a small crack is a little bit is like somewhat normal, but that is obviously the whole corner settling.
It's just separated. And then here we just have like a little picture that kind of helps. So, if you're looking inside, you probably see this a lot at old houses. You can see cracks. How, a crack like this is probably normal. And whereas when you see something more significant here, it's an underlying issue with either the structure underneath or something else going on with the house. So that's one where, unless you're really confident that maybe the support underneath, like some of the newer homes, there's a subdivision I'm familiar with where it's not that big of a deal. You just have to put a footer in and jack up the house a little bit to put a new pole, like basically beam in. But if you're not, or you have any questions, that's definitely want to have a contractor check with you at that house. So the next is mold. Mold is, pretty easy to see, and a lot of people freak out about it. You just have to make sure it's pretty much taken care of. So the easiest way is to everything that has the mold on it, tear it out, and again, have a qualified contractor be able to remediate it for you, and then you just put everything new back. So I mean, if you have something that's this bad, you obviously aren't going to be able to paint over it or anything because you're not actually treating the mold. But generally, at least the sheetrock will have to be cut here, make sure there's no mold behind it, and then have it treated, and then basically put sheetrock back. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if you haven't dealt with mold a lot, have a contractor come with you and they can kind of give you an idea how bad it might be. But sometimes these things aren't that bad. Other times it could be a big expense for you.
The key thing here too is that the mold is coming from moisture, likely. So in these corners, there could be water problems. There could be I mean, the easy thing would be that a gutter is not draining right at the corner there. So you want to look at preventing after you treat it. You want to look at like making sure it doesn't come back. And so that's usually if it's in a basement, dehumidifier at minimum and maybe more.
Yeah, definitely. But it's like you said, it's probably an issue right here with moisture behind it, and it seems like more often than not it is a gutter. But we're not really, we're not really here to kind of tell you all the things that cause mold or how to treat it or anything like that. It's just more, here's what it looks like. Keep an eye out for it, and have a qualified. Reasonable contractors, what I was trying to say, come take a look at it and give you, because if you get some of these larger companies, they're going to just say, yeah, this is a lot more than what it needs to be to renovate it. Some of this stuff isn't a big deal, but you want to make sure that if it's something that is going to be a budget breaker for you to have properly remediated, that you get it caught before you either finish buying the property or you, make an offer, because you might have to drastically change your numbers. Termites is another really common one. Here's just kind of showing you what old termite damage looks like. So if you were to put your finger in there, it's just going to be really soft and start breaking it apart already. Here's what termites actually look like. A lot of people don't know what termites look like. So if you see this and then you peel apart a little piece of wood and you see these guys in there, then they are active and you've got termites that need to be treated. And that's another thing that can really freak people out. If you get, again, just someone that's good on your team that is reliable and honest to take a look at it, they can basically tell you, hey, this is going to be a big deal because they've done a lot of damage, or it's just, you've had it where just a deck needs to be treated. They generally treat the outside of the whole house too at the same time, but they're like, it's termite damage just here, so it's not a big deal.
Typically had like $800 or so just to treat to stop them from coming again. That doesn't have anything to do with the actual damage. I'm assuming that probably depends on the square footage of the house.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep. About 800 is about what we paid recently to have it treated. And that's the thing that can scare a lot of people is where you found the termites. How do you know how far back the damage is? And the answer is you generally have to either open up a little bit of sheetrock or, it's going to be visible. So if you have a deck, you can obviously see how far back they've gone. If it's like a wooden wall, you'll be able to kind of see where their damage stops. But yeah, that 800 is just for the treatment. So that's not even whatever construction you need to do. So here's some considerations if you're looking at a property with a septic system. It's very important that you verify that the system there is conventional and not an alternative system. If it is alternative, then make sure you're just kind of planning for that. And the difference between those two really quick is that a conventional is generally a gravity-fed system. It is the cheaper of the two. It's installed in land where it's easier to drain. Again, I'm not a septic contractor. It's just based on my experience and limited knowledge of septic systems. But alternative systems are also called engineered systems. And anytime you add engineering in anything, it's going to be expensive. So those systems are generally 2 to 3 times as expensive starting off as conventional systems. And they're used in land where either it's rocky or you've got like a clay type soil to where it doesn't absorb the sewage well. And so if you think you're going to be spending $12,000 or on a new system or $5,000 on repairs because you need a new tank and some lines replaced, but it's actually an alternative system, then those numbers could change drastically for you.
And around here,
yep.
Just around here, it's often getting to be alternative now. I mean, it's we have a rocky soil, et cetera. So it's prepare for the worst.
Yeah. The thing we do is, I mean, as you stay in the market, and not to freak people out, but as you're in your area, you will start to know what areas are more than likely alternative and which ones are conventional. If you have, and that's why if you're checking out a house and you see neighbors, and I should have put pictures in here, but alternative systems, you can tell what they look like from above the ground. Conventional systems, you don't see at all
Yeah.
in the yard. So if you are able to see that all of your neighbors have an alternative system, and you're buying an old home that's 1970, and you don't see the septic system, and it's supposed to be conventional, then just beware. Make sure you have that. I would check out the septic system, have it inspected, because that's going to be worth it. If there's for some reason where the septic system is no longer functional or it's failed, and then you have to put in a new one and it's alternative, then alternative systems start off at about $35,000. So that's another big line item that could cost you a lot. So that being said, you can always check. You can check with the health department for records. Sometimes if it's a conventional system, they may have had a repair within the past few years, and you're going to be good. So always advise when you have a property that has a septic system to check with the county's health department to see what files they have on record, because that could really ease your mind. And just as a rule of thumb for us, if you have a property that you're buying and it's conventional and there are no records on file, and then you talk to the seller, and they say they've never pumped it or they've never done anything to it, then we just assume it's going to be 3 to 4 just at least, and repairs for it. Because a lot of times you're gonna have to pump the tank, which is at least a few $100s, anywhere from 5 to 7, and then it's likely got the distribution box or a drain line that needs to be replaced, anything like that. So it adds up quick. So basically, again, what you want to know is what's the worst case scenario if the septic system isn't good and it has to be replaced, or like I was saying before, if it's likely that it at least needs to be repaired and maintained. So the other thing to look out for septic systems is setbacks could be an issue for small lots. So you want to make sure that even if you have a conventional system, they generally require a lot more land than an alternative system. So your soil might be fine, but if you have a smaller lot and a drain field has failed, and you don't have a reserve area, like another area that this conventional can go in, then you're more than likely going to have to put in an alternative system. So that's something that you can check on with the health department. So say, hey, here's this piece of property. Here's how big the land is. Here's where the current system is. It's got issues with the current septic system. Would I be able to put in a new one? They'll be able to give you a rough idea if you can or not.
Great information. Thanks, Chase.
Yeah, thank you.
You know more than I do.
On that, guys, if anything. Do you guys see any issues? Have you seen any issues with properties that are in town connected to the public sewer and public water, and what are some of the issues that you might see when it comes to that?
So this is me speaking first, but I like to hear, Matthias, what you think about how it is in Harrisonburg too. But you take a lot of risk off the table when it's city water sewer, in the sense of you don't have to worry about a system to mess with.
Right.
But you still have the laterals to the municipality. Yeah. So you might have to still replace that. And the thing is this is more so for the sewer line, is it's good to see if you can, if you can scope it to know that it's going to be okay, because you could have the line collapsed and sewage could be backing up in the home. It might not happen yet to the current owner, but it could happen to you in a few months. So depending on the house's age, you might actually want to scope the sewer line. We generally don't do that a lot around here, but I know that other investors in older cities, they'll do that a lot. And just as one example, I know somebody out of Louisiana, that area, he had bought a rental property and it was working fine. He owned it for a little over a year. And they started having sewer issues. And what had happened was their line collapsed and broke off near where it goes down into the municipality line. So if you think of here's the house line coming in, and then goes down to connect into the main sewer. He had to replace all of that, and it was about, I think it was about 30 grand.
Shoot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it went down. I'd have to ask him again how many feet it went down, but it went down more than normal.
I've heard of that, or replacing the line to the city being like thousands, but not, that's a lot. Yeah.
Well, that's a worst case scenario, because I want to say it was 8 feet deep to get to the main layer. And generally, I don't know if you know what it is in Harrisonburg, but I want to say it's generally just like 3 feet deep or something.
Probably, yeah. And there's all sorts of different things that can happen. So I recently learned that you can have your sewer back up in your house. So sewage spewing from a drain in the floor or something like that. And it has nothing to do with your line. The city line could have been backed up. So like, just because that's happened, is I heard about that. It's like automatically that's going to be the owner's problem, but call the city first, and they even have after hour people that can come check it out, because it could be backed up on the street and causing a problem in your house.
That's something that neighbors actually had too. And like you said, it's best to check with the city then, but a lot of times they try to install like backflow valves. So if you have an issue, then the sewer doesn't come back. But even still, like
those I hear cause problems too.
Yeah, like that's why if you're really like looking at everything that you possibly can, if you're in a neighborhood where you're the lowest house on the street, and there's a sewer manhole kind of nearby where a lot of the sewage goes through, then you could check to see if it has backflows and everything. But that could be a potential risk, because I do know of properties here in our area that hard rain and a lot of sewage, and it'll just back up.
What's the number one rule of plumbing?
I have no idea.
It flows downhill. So
yep. Yeah. I mean, honestly, when I'm looking at a property, I've never been like, oh, this is downhill in the neighborhood, I'm never going to buy it. But it's just, it can happen. It's just something that can happen. I mean, everything that you do is going to have some sort of risk to it, but it's just something else to know about.
The benefits overall of real estate investing outweigh the potential risks that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, there's things you can do for all of these things, like the septic, you can see what the neighbors are doing and what the health department says. For this, you can, if you're really concerned about, hey, this house is like really low, it's in a weird setting, it seems like you could have flow issues with sewage, or maybe it's up and might have water pressure issues, then you can check with neighbors to see how they're doing, if they've heard of anything bad about this house. Because if that house has ever had the basement back up with sewage, the whole neighborhood's going to know about it. So
yeah.
And we actually, I don't think I get into wells here today, but that's another thing that you can do is we've had to drill wells, and while you could literally drill down 20 feet apart and have two different depths that you hit before you get water. If you have to drill a well, what you can try to do to mitigate some risk is talk to all the neighbors nearby and see how deep their wells are. So it's not a guarantee that yours will be about that similar depth, but that can help hedge some risk too. So, and that'll help with your numbers as well, because all the well drillers, they drill by the foot. So we're gonna get into some different methodologies real quick. So the first methodology is estimation by square foot. So you're basically just saying this rehab project is going to be X amount of dollars per square foot, which is based on what type of grade of rehab it needs or what grade of finishes you're doing. So for example, if you're just doing something that's carpet and paint, it might be, let's say, $15 a square foot. I'm kind of throwing off numbers, but whereas a major renovation might be, changed to $37 a square foot. It's more of like a rough rule of thumb that you can set up for yourself. And it's kind of nice just to track, like if you have a few projects, just see, okay, this is a light project, how much did it end up costing me per the square foot? That can give you a rough rule of thumb in the future when you're talking to people. A lot of people who are doing like wholesaling, or they just want to come up with a renovation price quickly without seeing the property, or, just based on what the seller is telling you, then they'll do that. So for example, we use about $15 to $17 a square foot. If it just needs carpet paint, cosmetic works, it's very clean. For example, the other way to do that is you could have, based on a size of a house, so up to 1,400 square feet is for just a cleanup renovation would be 15 to 20 grand. If it needs a major line item and everything else that's in cosmetic, so one or two major line items, everything else that's in cosmetic, it might be 35 grand for a 1,400 square foot home, for example. Major rehab would be like 50 to 60. So these are all rough numbers that you can use. And those are examples too. So that's actually what we use if it's a standard renovation where we're pretty much doing everything cosmetic, and it's roughly a 1,400 square foot home, and it needs, let's say, HVAC system with ductwork. So that's your big line item. Then it's probably going to cost about 35 to 40 grand. So you're not moving walls or anything like that, but you're painting, you're updating everything, you're putting HVAC in. The next is estimation by the room. So that's generally only used for kitchens and bathrooms. So if, for example, what we do, if we just have a standard smaller bathroom, it's going to be about $2,500. Kitchens, that's going to vary wildly depending on what finishes you're using. But the idea here is just to give you different methodologies that people use and see which one fits you the best. Because all of these can work. They're not supposed to be very precise estimations, except for this last one, which is the estimation by individual items. So that involves going through the property and going through the sheet like we were talking about earlier, and saying what each line item will be for the renovation. So what we generally do is we'll do that. We'll walk through, we'll put every line item down. And if we have any questions about what anything costs, because you might have some weird issues, for example, let's say something that's structural but not extremely major, you're going to have a contractor come back and give you a price for that. That's what we do. And then you add all of that stuff up, and then you add 10% to it. So, and then round up. So if it's a $30,000 renovation that comes out through the individual line item, then we add 10% to that, which comes out to 33. And then I round up to the nearest 5,000. So that'd be 35,000. Hope that kind of makes sense. My thought process and way I do think might be confusing.
There's always things you don't anticipate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is on that sheet too, is the miscellaneous section isn't like, hey, should I put something in there? It's like, it's at least $1,500 for the miscellaneous. And that's not like unexpected expenses. Those are the small expenses that add up. Like we're talking about earlier, the smoke detectors, the fire extinguisher, the, hardware for cabinets or whatever that you're not thinking about. So basically this is kind of piggybacking off that. As you gain experience, you can offer sight unseen based on square footage. So that's what a lot of wholesalers do. They'll either use a square footage formula to know, hey, this is based on what this guy is telling me and what it needs. Here's what it likely is going to cost to renovate it based on the square footage. Or they will do, okay, this is a 1,400 square foot home. It needs X, Y, and Z. It's likely about in this ballpark, like I said before. Cosmetic, and it all varies depending on what market you're in. So, if you're watching this and you're out of state, it could be substantially less than what I was talking about before. Or if you're in California, it would be substantially more. So the best thing to do is, again, it's tedious the first few times, but get your pricing together. And then as you do a few of the projects, you'll have all your prices together, and you'll even just have an idea of what it is yourself. And then you can make these other rough rule of thumb formulas that work perfectly for you and are more accurate. So here's rehab tips. This is also for like, if you have a project like we were talking about before, let's say you're really familiar with your numbers, but you've got something weird. And we always try to get 3 quotes from contractors, because you don't want to have a foundation issue that the first contractor tells you is 30 grand. And it turns out to be 7, because that could have been the reason between you doing the deal and not. And then make sure you never pay ahead for work that hasn't been completed. If a contractor, for example, is done, like it says here, 50%, then they should be paid no more than 40. You always want to, if possible, have it to where you're owing the contractor. Especially right now with how work is, like it's hard to get contractors. It's easy for them to find work. So extremely easy for them to find work. So you just don't want it where they've finished a job or almost finished a job and they walk off on you, or you owe them more and then they just never come back, because that has happened. And then for new contractors, we always ask for references. And then we check the references too. We make sure they're licensed and insured. So a lot of these things you'll see is like, or you'll hear people talking about how cheap they're getting things done. And that's great when you can find somebody that does great work. They're licensed and insured and they're a very reasonable price. But for peace of mind and making sure the work's done right, it's better just to pay the extra 5% or maybe it's 10%, whatever it ends up being from the bids, to get somebody that's licensed and insured. And the philosophy that I've learned the hard way is you don't want to go with the most expensive guy, but you don't want to go with the cheapest guy either. So your lowest and highest bid, we always get 3. So you're generally going with that middle one, but sometimes, from talking to them, you'll get an idea of how they are as if they're reputable or reliable, but you might need more than 3 quotes. So we've had some where we had to get 5 quotes. The highest and lowest quote were thrown out, and then we decide what the middle 3. But as you get a feel for rehabbing in your market, it's easy to make a booklet with your typical color schemes and rehab materials to make things quicker and easier. So that's kind of like that sheet we're talking about. Or I know other individuals make spreadsheets. If you need a contractor, so this is really helpful for if you're trying to find people. Your best thing to do is your A-team contractors, the ones that are the most reliable. They do great work. They're reasonable. They're trustworthy. You ask for references from them first. If you can't find anybody, then you go to local investors, posting in groups like this one or networking with other investors to see who they use. And then finally, you can do, builder grade material shops. Sometimes you can find good contractors there early in the morning. And the final one that we will do is Facebook. If you, just basically post looking for a contractor, and with the way Facebook is now, you can see when you are recommended somebody and they're linked to you, you can see what their profile looks like, if they've gotten a lot of good reviews or not. And generally like to see at least 3 people recommending them, and it looks like they have a professional Facebook. Like if they're, you go to their personal profile and it just doesn't look professional or anything like that, then you probably don't want to use them. Any other recommendations for everybody, or any questions, any thoughts?
Well, I was going to add too that, I mean, if you use a realtor, I mean, you can probably figure out some of this stuff through them as well. Like, I mean, I know Chase and I both have people that we use a lot. We recommend a lot for various items, and especially your first time, you're probably looking at trying to get a study period put in place in the contract so you can really scope these things out. So you might want to have a general contractor if there's a trusted one, or you might want to have like go-to plumber, go-to HVAC person, a go-to Class A contractor, a go-to roofer, a go-to, all these things that you want to have lined up. And that can be a good place to turn to as well.
Yeah. I think if you have an agent that understands investing, then you can just, it's worth its weight in gold as an investor. Matthias and I are both agents and investors. It's just one of the things is you got to keep in mind that a lot of agents are very busy. So even the ones that are good, investors are just demanding. That's the way we are. We're gonna need to show and make a lot of offers in order for something to stick. So just keep that in mind, and make sure you're just cognizant of the agent's time too, because they're gonna probably have to run a lot before they get something. And I guess what I'm trying to say is just you want to make sure that because I would do this before I was even licensed, that you're more than likely very serious about the property before you go and
Yeah.
Ask them or have them show you around or whatever.
And it's all about building that team, right? I mean, like, so, you know, if it's an agent's one person, you talked about a contractor giving you recommendations. It's about, you know, that whole team. I mean,
yeah,
the people that you can trust to give you good recommendations, et cetera.
And then the thing is too, is like right now when this video is being recorded, being cognizant of how the market is, if you think if everything out there tells you need to make offers, which you do, you have to make a lot of offers. But if you're thinking that, hey, I'm going to find an agent or a team member that is going to write offers, or I'm putting in 50% of list price with the way the market is right now, then that's one thing. That's like an example of what I'm talking about. No one's going to take you seriously. So, it's, have them guide you, have them help you, and just try to be respectful of each other's time and really make a big difference. But if you get somebody good like that, they can make recommendations for contractors and really cut down on the work you have to do and make things a lot easier. Any other recommendations? Any questions? All right. Well, our next meetup is October 20th. We don't have a topic yet for it, but we've got that the third Wednesday of the month, which is the 20th. And let's see, any questions? Otherwise, that's really pretty much it.
I'll have to think about this a little more.
What's that?
I have to think about this a little more and then see what comes up to mind and then ask you a few questions later on.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Well,
I mean, really, I feel like this part of the equation is what stops a lot of people, because okay, if you know how to see what the house is going to sell for, which I think there's a lot of videos and a lot of ways to show you how to run comps, then the thing that's like kind of more market specific and people can be unsure about their own skills in is, what is this renovation going to cost? And hopefully this today has really helped people with how to put something together, like how to go about finding that knowledge in their marketplace to put their own renovation costs and list and formulas in place. But I think if you can do that, it really takes out a lot of the anxiety of buying an investment property too.
And some commentary I would add too to that is that it is one way to find like being able to add value to a place, doing rehab, finding a place that needs something fixed is a good way to get a property that will not be overpriced. Like to get a property that will cash flow well if you're looking to buy and hold, or a property that you could maybe flip, is you're going to have some work, some reason for that equity gain. So if you're looking to manage or do repairs, like this is a great way. If you're looking to not do that kind of thing, if you don't really want to, it takes effort. Even if you're not doing the work yourself, it takes time, it takes effort to manage everything and to put everything together. It can be people's full-time jobs. So like, just depends on what you're looking for. But it is a great option if you're looking to get into some real estate that will ultimately be a good deal for you at the end of the day. But it's going to take work to get there, and there's risk involved.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we could give you kind of rough rule of thumb what numbers are like around here, but depending on who you have on your team and who you use, we'd be doing you disservice. So it's better for you, unfortunately, to put in the work and, go on Lowe's, see what prices are for certain things, cabinets, countertops.
Right.
And then another tactic is have a GC look at it. Like if you're going to you could be an investor where you're going to have a general contractor and they're going to do all the work. And that's great. That's a way to do it, but you're probably not going to be as competitive as somebody who else is managing the subcontractors. So it's two different ways of going about it, and both of them work. If you're doing the GC route, then have a few different GCs, but still understand whatever price they give you. I would still add that 10% buffer because even if you write everything down, what they think they're going to do and what finishes are going to be done are probably going to be different than what you think. So I've seen somewhere I've had it happen where I'm like, hey, you can take over this whole project, and I'm thinking it's going to be looking like how I do it, and it's not the same caliber of work, or it's a lot higher because they're putting more work that needs to be done for a property that doesn't need it. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, I just wouldn't be scared on your first one. It's definitely, there's value in having a GC where they manage their subs, because you know that they won't, the subs won't take advantage of you, but you're paying more for that, and you don't get quite as much experience either. So a lot more headaches going the sub route, but long term it could be pretty good.
What can you tell me about funding any of those major events for a property that has a bad roof, bad I don't know, foundation and whatnot?
So I don't know. I think we should have some on the site now that we've had like funding for flips and everything, like videos where we've talked about just funding, but for something like, let's say it's let's say a specific, or if you just like specifically for one renovation piece, I mean, you could use credit lines from a bank. If you have a loan already on the house, like you have a different loan that it qualifies for. What a lot of people are doing for rehabs is they are either using hard money. And so basically it's a lender that's loaning off of the value of the property when it's completed, as opposed to your lendability as an individual. So depending on and hard money lenders can vary dramatically in what types of rates and how much they loan and how much they check into you versus the property. Some will just look at the property and your experience with flipping. And others will, look at your credit score and stuff too still. So that's one route, is hard money. The other route is credit lines with the bank. So you can do an equity line of credit, or just a specific, possibly a signature line of credit if it's not that expensive of a roof. I know people who've done credit cards, which we would not recommend, because that'd be very expensive if your project starts to take longer. You could also use private money. So if you have friends or family that's looking for return on their money, because right now they're making like 0.5% in the bank, or 0.25% if they have like a high yield savings. You could offer them a more attractive rate to have them lend the money for the project until it's done. And the final thing is, if you have a new project as partner with somebody who's done it before, they, if you found the deal and you're managing it or something, they provide the capital, something like that. There's a lot of different ways you go about it. I mean, you can negotiate it up front with the seller where you don't put anything down for the house if they're going to finance it for you. For example, if you do seller financing, and then you spend your money on the renovations or whatever large line item needs to be done. There's a lot that we talked about for financing, because you could do the house and the renovation without any of your own money if it's not common, but if you have the right financing structure.
But you do raise a good point in the fact that, like, often to acquire a property that needs this much work, you might need to be able to buy it with not traditional financing, or certainly not government loans. And I mean, there's the renovation loans, et cetera, that might work, but it is a thing to think about. And obviously the more access to funds you have, whether it's equity lines of credit, whether it's, the hard money, whatever, that's going to be key to be able to making some of these things work. So that's definitely a good place to start. And check out harrisonburgrei.com for some of those videos about financing.
And a lot of people are using the home equity lines of credit, and kind of goes back to your first market report. If you don't own a home right now and you're planning on staying there for a while, you never know how much it's going to continue to go up. But if you were in it 2 years ago and you had bought something and had one of the loan products, FHA, the home you bought didn't need a lot down, you could refinance out or have a credit line from it right now in order to help with some of that stuff.
Well, and if you think you're going to be in your house for 5 years, or you're going to buy a house and be in there for 5 years, I mean, if you put it on a 15-year, mortgage, you might be able to pay down a good amount, and also the amount that it increases in 5 years could be a significant amount to put towards things. I mean, that's not the most investor savvy. People typically don't like the 15-year mortgages in the investor world because they're more trying to maximize leverage. But that's not a terrible way either. Like there's a lot of, I think buying real estate is a little bit like planting a tree. Like you wish you did it 10 years ago, and more opportunities come along the more that you buy and hold for a longer period of time. Of course, market swings can happen, but yeah.
I mean, I would say like if money is the thing anyone's concerned about too, though, is they just have to really think about what options you have, because there's probably the first thing that's gonna be hard if you use someone else's money is having the credibility, because you haven't done anything yet. So your main hurdle is getting your first couple of deals done. So finding somebody to work with, or knowing that you have the experience and knowledge in order to make a deal work. But otherwise, just look at your own resources. You probably have a 401k that you could use towards it. Like I said, if you have that experience, you probably have a friend or family member that that has some money set aside that would like to do something with it, and they're making nothing on their savings account right now. I know a lot of people, especially this past week, have gotten scared about the stock market with the recent drop. So there's especially right now, there's just a lot of money out there. So
yeah.
But
Thanks.
Let's see. I don't think. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's see. Matthias, do we have anything else to go over? I think he just left, actually.
No, sorry, my camera died. I think that's it.
Well, yeah, guys, I guess we'll see you on the 20th. If you guys have any questions, or like about anything we've gone over or anything else, funding, feel free to just make like a comment in the Facebook group. Some of the we should have funding videos on the site already, because we've gone over, quite a bit of different ways, because there's a lot of different funding structures you can go through too, where the seller can finance a lot of it for you if you have somebody that's agreeable. And that really would minimize the amount out of your pocket, like you were talking about. And we're hopefully within the next couple of months going to have a hard money lender from Northern Virginia that'll come in and speak to. But a lot of different options for that, for the money side of it. But yeah, thank you all for coming out. I guess we'll wrap it up tonight since we don't have any questions. And looking forward to see you all next time.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Matthias just posted the link in the chat, so if anybody wants to check that out for the website, there it is. But until then, I'll see you all next week.